Ailish McFarlane, and I work in the regulatory and policy sphere here with ESB Networks. And I'd just like to thank everyone for taking the time today to join us on this webinar on Beat the Peak. So just as way of a recap, in 2022, the electricity and landscape in Ireland really changed. So the war in Ukraine led to the really high gas price, the gas security of supply crisis, and subsequently really high increases in electricity prices in Ireland for customers. And so at ESB Networks, we thought, what can we do? So we launched a number of pilots to help both commercial and domestic customers with this issue. And one of those pilots is this one that I'm going to talk about today, which is Beat the Peak Domestic. And this was an awareness campaign to allow customers to take control of their electricity usage. So what will we be going through today? So I'm going to look at the objectives and the customer experience. So it's really what we wanted to get out of the pilot and how we wanted to measure it. I'm going to be going through the signs of success. So did customers actually change how they use their electricity during peak times? Were they aware of what peak hours were? And how did they interact with the pilot? And then following on from last year's pilot, I want to take these learnings and use for future iterations. So, looking at demographics who interact with the pilots, looking at when people use their peak hours, did they learn what they were in the end, and how we can use that to make our pilot a better success for customers for next year and the future. And please, if any questions, just jump in whenever, and we can make this a bit of a conversation as well, or you can just leave them to the end. Okay, so let's just jump into the pilot aims. So in this slide, we have the objective, the strategy, and the target. So we wanted this pilot to be as successful as possible. And to do that, we needed to ensure that we were able to capture any learnings from our pilot users. And what I mean learnings is, did they understand what electricity usage and what that meant? So did they understand that, your dishwasher takes up a lot of energy uses and so does your tumble dryer? And were they able to make any meaningful changes from that? And as part of the pilot, we had a number of incentive mechanics, and we wanted to know, were these effective? What worked, what didn't? So for example, we had some advertisements in bus stops you might have seen. We had energy messages going through your text messages, and what was effective and what was able to drive participation in this pilot. And then in terms of strategy, we wanted to deliver so-called energy events to our customers, and we wanted to nudge them to desired outcomes. So as I said, these energy messages generally took the form of text messages, and they said things like, did you know if you use your hairdryer on cold air, it uses less electricity than hot air, and that sort of thing. There are a few about the tumble dryer, and we also, made customers aware if there was ever an amber alert on the electricity network for demand and generation. So the difference between those is quite tight. And then what was our target? So our target for this pilot was to recruit 15 to 30,000 customers. And what I mean by recruit is, so for somebody to sign up to the pilot, they have to go onto the ESB Networks webpage. And there's 2 pages as part of that webpage to sign up. So the first page is where you fill in your personal details, so your name, your email, your phone number. And the second page is, why are you signing up to this pilot? Why do you want to be a part of it? So whether that might be a sustainability reason, it might be an energy cost saving reason. So we wanted to bring that all together as well as part of our target. And we really wanted to create a strong foundation for this program going forward as well. Okay. And then measurement. So what was really important to us was measuring this campaign. So how customers were reacting to it, were they finding it useful? Were we really getting the message across of beating the peak? And when we say beating the peak, we mean beating the energy peak. So what we did was we looked at this in terms of our success, our health, and our insight. And then within that, we wanted a full 360 view of how we were going to interact with our customers. So we asked our customers, we asked them, we observed what they're doing, and we deciphered what the message was. And the main tool we use in terms of measurement, so after the end of each of these energy messages, we would have sent out another message to customers asking them, did you participate in the energy event? Did you do another action as part of this energy event? Or did you ignore it? Were you interacting at all, or was it helpful to you, and why you joined this peak event in the first place? And just flag as well, so we asked for customers for their MPRN data. And we had a really good uptake of customers actually giving us that data, but we weren't actually able to access that smart meter data. And we wanted to think about that as well in our learnings going forward. Okay, so any questions on that at all, or will I just jump into pilot experience and participation?
Yeah, just keep going. There's no questions as yet.
Perfect. Okay, so what did the pilot look like? So last year, our pilot ran from October to March, and we had numerous campaigns, or I suppose awareness messages during that. So, and these were timed at specific times in the year, and then we could kind of measure their success. So we had radio throughout for most of the campaign up until February. You know, we had press, we had media partnerships, we had some influencers get involved. For me, at my bus stop that I get into work, there was a nice ad on Beat the Peak and a man loading a tumble dryer. We got influencers involved. It was a kind of a holistic view of all the different things that we could bring to this campaign to make customers more aware of their electricity usage. And some customers, you know, they might be more on their phone, or some of them might look at the radio more. And we wanted to make sure everybody had the ability to sign up for this pilot, no matter what kind of media you use or where you get most of your information from. Um, so on our just to flag as well, there's a little kind of line there in the middle flagging marketing ramp up, and that's when we really started pushing it in January. So it's after the Christmas period. You know, people might not have as much money, and it's a good time to maybe try and help with the financial incentive for that as well. Okay, so once you signed up to Beat the Peak, what did it look like? So the first phase was here in the recruitment phase. So this is our multi-awareness campaign that was on the slide before, from October to March, and it was really driving the awareness and the key message. So you might look at, you know, hear something on the radio or see something online and you find out about Beat the Peak. And then there was the registration. So the registration was those two web pages that I mentioned before and the MPRN data. And just to flag as well, to get the MPRN data, so that's to tell ESB Networks about your specific meter data. And it takes a lot of effort to like get that MPRN data. So you have to go to your bill and you find the number, and then you have to go back to the ESB Networks web page and put that number in. And we actually had a really high uptake. I think it was about 80% of people actually put in their MPRN data. So it showed us that people were actually quite interested in this pilot and engaging with it. And then there was some onboarding communication. So once you signed up and you registered, you were sent some emails and you were sent some SMS messages just to tell you, you know, what is the peak energy time? What is the pilot? And it was really around that educational piece of bringing people together and getting them to understand what they had signed up for and what benefits they could get from it. And then we go into the ongoing educational piece. So as I said, you got these text messages every now and again, usually in the evening, and they would say, did you know, like for an example, they could have said, did you know, if you use your hairdryer in cold, you know, you save a lot more energy. There was one about the tumble dryer, the dishwasher. They were kind of varied, and they tried to be a bit varied to focus on different types of people who might sign up for the pilot. And that's actually a really big piece that I'll go into later about the educational piece and who found those messages useful as well. And then there were these peak flexibility events. So as I said, whenever there was an amber alert on the electricity network, we were actually able to text people who had signed up to the pilot to say, you know, there is potential amber alert coming, just maybe not to use high energy intensive utilities if you can tonight. And then there's the research and feedback. So whenever we sent out some of these educational piece communications, we would have sent out another message to say, you know, did you participate in the event? Did you find it useful? And that's where we got most of our learnings from for this pilot. Okay, so in terms of results, how did we do? So the first one, so at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that our target was 15,000 to 30,000 customers, and we actually got 18,322 customers registered to the pilot. So that was brilliant for us because it was our first year of the pilot. We didn't really know how it would go, but it was a really good result, and it showed that people wanted more information, and or at least they wanted to know different ways of beating the peak in our world. I was going to say reduce reuse. But it's all in the same sphere. It's all looking at decreasing that electricity demand at peak hours. So if we looked at the type of people who signed up as well. So we had about 52% female, 46% male. We looked at the type of household segments. So 55% were child-free, 29% had younger families, and 14% had older families. And then we looked at the working situation. So now we live in a world where a lot more people work from home. They might use more electricity during the day. So 29% of people worked from home. 20.8% of people worked outside the home. And then most people did a bit of a hybrid mix between home and going into the office. And then 13% was other. And what we were really interested in was, why are you signing up for the program? And most people, it was to get a better understanding of their energy consumption. And I think this is really important when we think back to last year and we think all of the media messages, around this time last year, there was a lot of things in the news about, energy crisis and, meeting our demand for the electricity network. And I think people just really wanted to know a bit more and how they could participate and how they could help as well. But quite close behind that was also to get energy saving tips. So huge high prices last year, and it was great to see that that was another reason why people were signing up. And for sustainability reasons also is 52%. So that's really important. And I think we also have other figures and other insights we did as to kind of what household segments and why they signed up to the program. And they were interested in learning from that as well. And then we looked at which of the following do you spend a lot of time doing at home. So a lot of people were, TVs and movies, cooking, cleaning, and then I went back down to sports and health and beauty. So TV and movies, that's what probably I spend a lot of time doing as well at home. So it was just interesting to see where the electricity usage is coming from. When you think of TVs and movies, like smart TVs, they take up a lot more electricity than the conventional ones that we would have had maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Cooking and heating, the oven will use a lot more electricity than your air fryer will. And then cleaning and organization, maybe your tumble dryer takes a lot of heat, which is a huge electricity usage. And all those kind of things, there's different factors and there's different things that people could learn from this pilot as well in each of those segments. Okay, and just on the map as well, so we just had a kind of a higher uptake in Meath and Wicklow as well, so that was just a bit less uptake around here, but that could have been due to the media as well that we used, some maybe the radio stations or the bus stop and that sort of thing. So I'll just jump on to the next slide. The signs of success. So this was on Beat the Peak last year, and now we're looking forward into next year. So we think the pilot worked. We did a lot of work to drive awareness of the electricity network, of your usage, and nudging behavior change of maybe using appliances that had less electricity demand or less impact on the network. So the first one, in terms of awareness of the concept. So in terms of our findings, so we found that it was quite important that after the pilot, there was, from people who interact with the energy events, they had a much higher acknowledgement of what peak hours were, and this was up from 20 to 24% mid-campaign. So that's really helpful for us, that people are actually grasping on to what this means. So for us, peak hours would really be between 5 and 7. And beforehand, people would have said any time during the day. But the fact that they linked an energy event to a peak hours is really helpful for us and really interesting, and people actually grasp the concept of the pilot. And then if we jump over to understanding and intent, those that weren't taking part in the energy events, they were a bit more likely to ignore the peak hours. So it's interesting to think, why did they not participate in the energy events? They're getting these text messages on their phones. Was it that there was something, maybe there were messages, we could have been clearer, maybe we could have been targeting other, areas, maybe other demographics, maybe there was technologies that we should have been using maybe to target these customers. So it's all part of the learnings that we can maybe use for next year as well. And then in terms of nudged behavior change, so we calculated from the surveys we did and the messages that we got from participants that there are about 24,107 actions taking, and there was a 70% response rate, which is actually quite large response rate for the surveys. And it's very encouraging to us that people are really participating in this pilot and they're really getting involved. And they're actually very interested, which really bolstered us a bit as well over here in what we were doing. And then in terms of organic behavior change, so we started to get signs that participants were more conscious of their usage, with 89% consciously reducing their electricity usage between 5 and 7. So those are the peak hours again, and it was great just to reiterate that too. Okay. And then finally, how are our learnings informing our next iterations? So the pilot is going to launch again. So there's actually, the official launch is quite soon, but you can still sign up on our webpage. So I can send over a link after this webinar just for people who are interested or who haven't signed up yet. And in terms of the learnings that we want to take from last year into this year, so the first one is on awareness and recruitment. So we found that our signups for the pilot really increased when we pushed for more media. So say that's through your internet, you might have got an ad on Facebook or something, or you might have had something through the radio. So our participant increased very strongly. Like when we have a graph, there was big peaks in the graph when they happened. So that will be really useful to us in the future for this pilot, so we can use that for future media plans. And then also in terms of participant communications, so a very clear tone and a very simple message I think works very well. But also the frequency of when we do it. So if we say people are expecting a regular message, they're more likely to be involved in the pilot too. So we'll take that forward into learnings for next year. And then the younger audience. So we were a bit surprised that the younger audiences were the people who were less involved in the pilot. So it was a lot of people who were a bit older, who were more involved in the pilot and actually participating in these energy events. So for next year, we're thinking of, looking at our messaging as to why this demographic didn't take part, and anything more that we can do to focus targeting on this demographic. And then for energy events, they're most effective at embedding the idea of peak hours, and if we think of a financial incentive around them as well. So as I said, if you want to sign up for the pilot because you want to reduce your electricity usage maybe, and a lot of the time you're in the kitchen cooking in the evening, should we be sending messages to push for the air fryer rather than the oven? And it's about just thinking about that and thinking, is there a financial incentive when we're testing these most effective price points? And then in terms of motivation, so there seem to be signs from our results that there's a kind of a complex dynamic between financial and sustainability motivations. And although you might not have signed up because of the financial award, you might have been nudged that way during the energy messages that we sent out. But we want to learn from both of these, the sustainability and the financial message, when communicating to people, because it's a different world a little bit than it was last year, and we want to make sure people are focused on both sustainability and financial words when we use this pilot going forward. And then finally, additional support networks. So younger families and those working from home, they found it most difficult to change their behavior. And that's very understandable because, younger families, it's very busy. If you're working from home, you generally have to have your computer on for most of the day. And for going forward, we need to think of more messaging or how we can include these groups more in the pilot going forward. Okay, so that is me, and thanks everyone for listening to me for the last 20 minutes. And just any questions or any thoughts or anything you think we can do for next year going forward, and we'd love to hear it as well.
Very much, Eilish. It's really interesting. Really interesting to hear how the campaign we were talking about last year, encouraging people to get involved with, actually panned out. So you tried different messages, is that right? And you compared the approach, and that's what was the result of your last slide there.
Yeah, so after, say, an energy event, there was another text message sent out to participants to say, did you participate? Did you not participate? why not? And then from those learnings, we were able to bring that back into kind of a model. And then it's, it calculated everyone's response, and then it brought back, from when you initially signed up and those questions, what's your demographic? Why did you originally sign up? And we were able to figure out a bit more learnings from it. So it was really interesting, actually, who was involved and who didn't get as much involved.
That's excellent. So a lot of people on this call will probably be, in our reduce use public sector teams, trying to work out how to communicate to their staff. And so there's about how to save energy both at home and at work. So there's potentially some good learnings here in terms of what kind of works and so on. Yeah, so just one here. Are you doing more of a focus on positive messages this year? I.e., now's the good time to use energy rather than saying don't use energy now because it's a peak, or is it going to be a mix?
Yeah, so we've looked as well at using a message where, use your tumble dryer when it's windy outside, or maybe don't use your tumble dryer when it's not windy outside or when it's sunny, and it's to get people just thinking and learning about the network in a bit of a different way. And in Ireland, so much of our generation comes from wind, but unfortunately, a lot of that can be curtailed. And it's just to get people thinking, and it's to start that message of where it all kind of comes from and the educational piece around it too. So I think the focus is changing a bit, but it's still very focused on, for the winter anyway, it'll still be focused on the peak hours and what you can do to help.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a summer and a winter kind of plan.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And when you say curtailed, you mean that we don't use all the wind energy we've got sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes we do, and it's just to make people aware that, make the link between the weather sometimes and your usage, and it's to bring, that whole holistic piece together.
But here, were there any direct financial incentives directed to pilot participants other than savings on their bills?
No. So I can talk to my team about it, but I know at the time there were some discussions of, should we look at financial incentives? Do you think people would be more motivated if they were paid? If they're more motivated if they got, a donation to charity? Would they be more motivated if they got a one for all voucher? And how to link into that a bit more as well. So I'll have a quick chat to the team after this call and see where that went and try to get a bit more information. If that would help.
Yeah, I was in the group, I think, that had the charity
donation.
I think I don't think I was. Well, there were some voucher options, weren't there?
Yeah,
last year?
there were.
Yeah,
there were. Yeah. I just don't have those results with me right now.
That's okay.
So I'll grab them as well.
That's great. Any more questions? Just please pop them in the Q&A. And so, when do you expect to launch this year's campaign?
Yeah, so you can sign up on our website, but I suppose the official launch will be in a week or two as well. So we can make sure everyone on this link is sent out, an email when it is launched as well.
And do you expect to have any sort of initiatives for organisations to take part in for dropping peak load and so on?
Yeah, so we do have a B2B commercial which has launched. So that's for, say, your larger energy users, and that's a financial incentive to help them during peak hours. They can reduce their amount of demand that they have. And last year we also had a peak-to-peak commercial pledged, where it wasn't actually a monetary incentive, but you pledged that you would reduce some of your demand during peak hours. So, for example, there was a consultancy company, and they said that, during between 5 and 7, we pledge that we will plug our chargers out of the wall, and we're just going to use the battery in our laptop. So that was like a great incentive and a great way for some companies to kind of bring, their workforce along with the journey and being more aware of the demand that we have on the network and the sustainability and financial piece as well. So that was last year, but this year we're just doing the financial incentive B2B commercial.
Great. Okay. So if you could send me a link onto that, I can send it around to people here who might be interested. Okay. I think that pretty much covers questions. Thank you very much. If there's no more questions coming in, so I think I'll wind it up there and say thank you very much, Ailish, and thank you very much to everyone attending. And as I said, the video will be available and possibly slides as well, Ailish.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.